We've met over the years when you first started out with G4, and I said to you before we started this interview, you really were the only one I wanted to talk to, and I think a lot of people felt that, and even in the early days on the TV, you stuck out. And I don't know whether that was because you had a bigger personality, which by coincidence you did, but your voice was so unique. It's very hard, isn't it, when you're in a group of four and you're doing 60% of the work?
It was weird because it didn't start off that way at all. When we were at college, we were a barbershop quartet through and through, and then we gradually evolved to different repertoire. And I started to sing just the very high parts initially, and we passed the melody between us. And then on the X Factor, Louis and Simon decided it needed more of a focal point for the public, and I had the only blonde hair in the group. I had the most distinctive voice, the high tenor, which is very rare, and then it just sort of evolved into that place, and it was thrust upon all of us, and it was something not all of us were expecting, and it was a bit of a shock to my system to have to come out with the goods on a regular basis and rise to the challenge.
I remember one week, I think you did Bohemian Rhapsody. It was certainly a Queen song, and that was the moment for me when your career took off. That was also the moment where the media, I think, looked at G4 in a different light and went, actually, Jonathan is the star. That's uncomfortable, isn't it? Because when you're part of a foursome and you've got three mates, you don't really want people to keep ramming that down your throat, do you?
No, we were having a fantastic time, all of us as a group, and as soon as the media and management are starting to focus on one person more than the others, it does make it more complicated, both with vocal arrangements and making sure everyone's satisfied with the part that they're singing in the studio, which they then subsequently do on stage, and vice versa with photographs and who's more forward, further back, and all of that. And it's difficult, but at the same time, I think we all dealt with it fantastically well and realised that that's the world of media and X Factor and the record industry. And I think all accepted it and realised we all had individual things that we brought to the group. For example, Ben having perfect pitch. He was able to start our tracks off completely a cappella, and then the track came in afterwards, and without him we wouldn't have been able to do that. And with the fantastic earthy bass voice of Matt, I think that had a distinctive sound within it. However much people necessarily didn't focus on that when they listened, it was still there and part of the G4 sound.
How did you handle things like Jonathan Ross making fun of the fat one at the back, which I heard him do so many times? It's not fair. It might have been true in a sense that he was larger than you, but that doesn't really matter. If you can sing, you can sing.
I think what was interesting about us as a group is we broke a lot of sort of, traditional barriers down. We weren't a stereotypical pop group vocally, we weren't a stereotypical pop group visually, and we wore suits. We just sort of walked in and completely changed everything, and I think some people dealt with that in a great way and just said, right, that's G4. And Jonathan Ross, for example, picked on it in a more traditional history of pop music and said, actually, he's at the back, he's this, he's that, and would ridicule it in a way. But I think ultimately Jonathan Ross was a pinch of salt, and he was great at support with us as well, and we went on his radio, and actually we replaced the Four Puffs and a piano one on the Christmas special, which was fantastic fun.
How do you cope when people make those comments? Because we come in this business to be praised. We've all got massive egos, and we love people to tell us we're wonderful. But what happens with that? Then there are people who think we're rubbish. Doesn't matter how good you are. And when they make those comments, how do you deal with them? Did you learn very early on just to forget about it, throw the newspapers away, turn the radio off?
Well, I learnt, and I think we all did very early on, to be flattered by anybody having an opinion. And we were Marmite to the music industry, loved and hated by a lot of people each side, but we had a lot of people that loved us. And the reason that people were ridiculing us is because they were aware of us, and we were automatically aware that that was ultimately a positive thing. And I used to just twist that around in my head like I do now, and you'd get a negative review in an album review in a magazine or newspaper, and ultimately they've reviewed it. So you just think, fantastic. Someone will read that and read between the lines and go, actually, it's out. I look forward to getting it. And that's, I think, the way to work the industry in your favour and be more positive.
And again, your fans didn't care. Exactly.
And there were also people that weren't necessarily hardcore fans that were then aware of the album and the track listing, whether the writer slated it or not. They were aware of what tracks were on there, got excited about it, went out and bought it, and the support continued.
G4's in the past. We're going to spend the rest of the interview talking about you because we're fascinated to find out about your life now and your career and, of course, how you started out. You've got a new album out called Forever, and congratulations on this. It is really listenable. I don't think I click next on any of the tracks in the car. I tell everybody I listen in the car because I think it's a place where you're easily distracted, and if you're bored and if you're thinking about your shopping list, you know it's not very good. Well, it's true, isn't it?
And the sound's good in the car as well, which is one reason I like it. You're completely isolated. You've not got someone knocking on the door or anything. You're just completely in your own world. That's where I like to listen as well.
You're everywhere right now. Is that because you can deliver and that you can perform and you're not overtaken by the moment?
When I was a young boy, all I wanted to do was to be able to sing to and bring as much pleasure to as many people as possible. So when I'm in the position to do that, I just remember all of those memories as a child, and I just bring back all of that emotion, and I try and relay that in the most powerful way to the audience, whether it's live in Wembley. A few weeks ago I was there twice in 2 weeks. It was incredible, the Carnegie Challenge Cup final, and then for the Sports Soccer Aid celebrity match, raised a load of money there, and it was mad to have 85,000 people. But then at the same time, as you say, with TV, there's a huge audience at home and you've got to perform to them, and I love that, and I hope that I can rise to that challenge every time.
I'm just a normal person. Help me with this then. So we've got 85,000 people. I can deal with that because we've all got something in us that makes us want to show off, so that's fine. Then we've got the TV people. Well, we can't see them, so we forget about them. But what is it like on those Soccer Aid events where Ant and Dec are presenting, so you know they're watching you on a TV? Is that not distracting? Because that's an odd feeling, isn't it?
It is an odd feeling, and especially with kind of a comedic double act of presenters, sometimes they can get carried away and make funny comments, and you kind of just have to blank that out and think about the people that are at home feeling the emotion and the adrenaline of the event, and then hopefully perform for them. And thankfully I haven't got any of Ant and Dec's talking coming through my ears, so I don't get to hear it, which is good.
And 5 years ago we probably wouldn't have known your name. Now stars know who you are. How does that feel when you walk into a TV studio and the people you're appearing with or who are interviewing you know your name and your face before they've read their piece of paper?
That's what I find now very strange. I mean, I was fortunate enough to perform at the Andrew Lloyd Webber birthday party in Hyde Park last weekend, and to be there backstage and to have the huge mixture of people. I mean, there were all of the Nancys, the Josephs, people who've come through the same process as me on reality TV. But there was also Jason Donovan, and there was all sorts of people backstage, and you're just there. Ruthie Henshaw and Elaine Page, and they're all looking and saying hi to you, and you just think, how on earth has that happened to me? And to top it all off, to have Andrew Lloyd Webber aware of who I am, who for me was a really, really strong influence as a child, and to be there at his birthday party in Hyde Park and performing, and he knows who you are and he appreciates your performance and congratulates you on it, is very, very weird, I have to say. I don't think I'll ever get used to that.
You mentioned it earlier. Are there many Nancys in reality TV? And you say when you do an event like that, you go on and you're just able to do it. We know that you can sing. That's not a surprise now. That was always the case right from the beginning. Before all the hype and the makeovers and the tours, you were able to sing. When you go out on a stage like Wembley or in Hyde Park, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. For example, the soundman forgets to turn your mic on, or the band aren't at the right volume. How do you cope with the fact that you're virtually powerless in those events? Other than you standing there and singing, there's nothing you can do to control that.
I think having been through the X Factor and the pressures and the rapid learning curve you go on, you learn to just make things work. For example, back then I had a mouth organ to get my note to come in on The Lion King, and we were in the bottom two one week. I didn't think we were going to be, so I didn't have the mouth organ. So I have to walk up to Ben with 15, 16 million at that point, watching us, get the note off him, remember the note, keep singing it, and come in. I came in key and the song works. And having been through those kind of experiences, you now just get on with it. I mean, last night I was at the Music on Fire event down in Sandhurst, the military base, and the sound was very, very loud in my ears. I have in-ear monitoring, which is kind of like headphones, which you have whatever sound you want put through. So I've got the orchestra and my vocal, and it was very, very loud, my vocal, but the orchestra was quite quiet. So I just kind of had to persevere and hope my eardrums didn't explode. When I came off stage, spoke to the sound guy, and we sorted it out. But you just get on with it. You think about the audience that's there. There were 8,000 people. They're there to enjoy an event, and you don't want to let them down. And I think that's where diva-ish things can come out in some artists, where they just go, I'm not doing this, and walk off, whereas actually they forget it's about the audience, it's about those people there and entertaining them.
And of course, we don't care how difficult your job is, we just want to hear you sing.
Exactly. You want to feel the performance is strong and powerful, and despite whatever's going on stage, it's as strong as it can be, and that's what I try and aim to do.
So help me with this then. How do you find your note? What do you see in your mind that tells you, right, I need to pitch it there or there or there?
I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's different. For example, with a guitar, you put your fingers on the strings and you strum the chord. You find the frets and it's there. Piano, the same thing. When I was younger, I learnt the violin for quite a few years, and got to grade 5. And with that, there's no frets, so you're feeling it and you're developing your musical ear, people call it, and you then learn where the notes are in relation to each other, and the music kind of evolves from that. And essentially it's the same with your voice. You're doing finite alterations with your vocal cords, and hopefully it comes out right. And so far, with a few occasions where I've been a bit ill, it's a bit under the weather, things haven't worked quite so well, it tends to work. But I've not got perfect pitch. I can only work against an orchestra or a backing track or live instrumentalist of some kind. I can't just pluck a note out and tell you what it is. I wouldn't have a clue.
And once you've got that first note and it's there and it's almost correct, is everything okay then? Once you know you're into it, can you relax a little more, or is it every note you have to think about?
I don't think about the notes from then on. I'm just worrying about the words. It's a regular issue for me, is remembering lyrics, especially now I've been so busy recently with such a variety of different things. I'm learning scores and librettos and different tracks and different things for all sorts of events. Sometimes my brain's close to capacity for the learning, and I do mess up lyrics, but alongside that I continue, and most people who are there don't actually realise.
When you sing it though, how do you get the emotion in it? Is it there naturally, or do you have to make it happen?
I think having sung from such an early age, you have a lot of it just there naturally, but at the same time different events bring more emotion out in different tracks. Different things, current affairs in the media or something that relates to it, can really help you add extra emotion to the performance. But what's important to remember is you want the emotion to relate to the audience. You don't want to get too emotional yourself. I've been caught up in the past getting too emotional and caught up myself, and the performance actually lacks something. However much I'm feeling it, your voice starts to get all tentative and fluttery, and you're about to burst into tears, and the audience don't get as strong an emotional response to it for that reason. So it's all about nurturing it and performing it for them to get emotional. That's somehow something I've just got used to and developed through the years.
And occasionally on the air, I'll do that swallowing thing where you need to take a second and then come back, and, well, you can't really do that in a song. If those moments happen, how do you control that?
Most of the time I'm performing with microphones, and you can play away from the microphone and get away with quite a lot. If you've got a bit of guitar in your throat, you can do a quick cough to the side, and it's quite a small pickup on the front of the mic, so if you move away from it, if you need a quick swallow or a cough or something, you can get away with it and then come back in, maybe a fraction late, but no one really notices or minds. What's difficult at the moment is, having just done a few weeks in the Mikado, I'm performing completely acoustically there, so you can't get away with any of that. You just have to hope that it comes out exactly right, and make sure that you're in peak condition. Really, you can't get away with anything there, because
your audience will forgive you for far more in a live show. You can't do that in a production, can you?
Especially with other cast members around you that are all relying on your strong performance and to have the interplay on stage. So it's definitely more of a challenge in that environment, but it's a great challenge to rise to, and it's been great fun.
I want to go back to the beginning and talk about you as a child, because you seem to have everything. You're slim, blonde, good-looking, the girls love you. Were you always blessed in that way? I can't imagine you were ever bullied.
Completely the opposite. I was a completely odd kid in many respects, in that I was a singer. I used to sing in many ways, and people says like a girl, or with my unbroken voice. I loved that. I was incredibly angelic, but at the same time I was really rebellious, and I'd be in fights, and I'd be like messing about in the rugby pitch. I was a prop forward, bizarrely, just because I got into doing press-ups and sit-ups from an early age, and I ended up just being quite stocky and loving smashing into people on the rugby pitch, but then the next day I'd be in a cathedral performing beautifully with a load of guys. So people found me a bit confusing. And then sadly, going through puberty, I got a really bad bout of acne and just a nightmare. I mean, that's the biggest turn off for girls, isn't it, at school? So you're just like, oh, I'm getting nowhere. Ended up with a really extreme treatment for that, which thankfully has worked fantastically well. It dried all my skin out so much, though, that I had to have such strong moisturiser. It looked like I had makeup. So I had this weird time of my life where I had all of that and I was just a confusing kid. So people sadly did pick on me, but in hindsight it's made me who I am, it's made me a strong individual, and it's given me a lot of things to draw upon when I want to have a nice aggressive performance, I guess.
So what is it like now with things like Facebook and MySpace? I have a lot of people emailing me who I knew in my former life at school who suddenly want to be your friend and who I don't reply to. And it must be nice for you now to turn around and think, oh, maybe I've had the last laugh.
It is weird, actually, with social networking groups now. Everyone seems to want to be your friend, whether they're your friend or not. I find it very strange that it's not someone that's just in your phone book that you just call anyway. I find that whole world very strange. I love it for interacting with my fan base. It's a great way of getting to them quickly with information and stuff, and that I think is fantastic. But I do find it weird when there's, as you say, old friends from school that didn't look twice and now, hey, how are you, and all this, and you just think that's very strange. But I, as you do, just don't accept them and get on with your life with the friends that are your friends.
It's Alex talking to Jonathan Ansell, one of the biggest stars of today. And that wasn't the case probably 5 years ago. Nobody really knew you. How have your nearest and dearest coped with that, your friends and family? Because some say that it's not that they change, it's that you change, or is it the other way around?
It changes far more of your life than you could ever imagine. In relative obscurity, I was at college, I was doing some concerts. I was a professional singer, but no one really knew who I was. There was a small, bizarrely back then, a fraternity of fans who'd come to my gigs, all about 20 of them. And then as soon as you're famous, and I find that word very strange, but as soon as you're thrust into this mad TV world and millions of people watching you week after week, it doesn't just change your life, it's everybody around you. And that's indirectly when they just are your friend, or people know they're your friend, or they're your parents or your brother or your sister. But when you're with them, all of a sudden people seem to disregard them more than they did before. For example, I went round to a friend's house and the mum hadn't seen him for ages and was talking to me the whole time and hardly spoke to him, and then we left and went out, and it was like, that's a bit weird. He's your son. It's very odd, and suddenly things do dramatically change. But you need those strong people around you, and for them to appreciate how the world is and how it's changed a bit for you, and then hopefully work in making it as normal as possible for you. And you kind of have to train them to be the bad guy when you're out, that they can go, look, we've got to go, or someone's just outside of your taxi's here, so you don't feel bad against people who are asking for an autograph and things like that. But ultimately, in time, people get more used to it in your family and friends, and it becomes normal as such. But it's strange. People
act odd around you. They don't seem to know how to behave. How have you learned to cope with that?
It's all very strange. As I say, having been thrust into it just straight away, you've got no time to really adjust to it. You just have to get on with it somehow. And it is very odd how people have preconceptions of you. That's something I found the hardest, is they see you and they, as you say, they think they know you, whereas actually they haven't really got a clue who you are. They know who your media persona is and how you've come across with that, but they don't know the real you. And it is odd how they react differently to you, how you end up with a different table in a restaurant, whether that's right in the window to try and draw more people in, or whether they're nice and they hide you way out the back or whatever. It is strange. I remember once I went to a restaurant, it's called the Char Bar. It was really funny because they come out with raw food for you and there's a grill plate in front of you, and I went with a friend and we both ordered a steak, and we'd got it and the plate's been heated up. They come out and we'd got some prawns with it as well. So they put out the steak for him, and it was sort of a bit brown around the edge, wasn't that really nice pink colour, and they just sort of slopped all the prawns out in one go. And then she walked round to me, immaculate steak, much bigger than his, same price, laid it neatly down, and each of the prawns individually lay them. And we just looked at each other and thought, why am I any different to you? And that was one indication where service was just so dramatically different. It was very, very weird. But I have to say, the steak tasted fantastic, and it was quite fun for me to have a much bigger meal. It was hysterical.
And everybody has an opinion, don't they? No matter where you go, they all feel they have the right to tell you exactly what they think.
Especially when, I voted for you, and automatically they've kind of paid for 5 minutes of your time. That's a funny line.
We're going to take another piece off the album. A song that I really, really love is Canto della Terra, which I first heard through Andrea Bocelli. What is your skill in picking the right songs? Is it just what moves you? Is it luck? How do you do it?
It's a fantastic team around me, a huge love of a wide variety of music, and ultimately there is a huge amount of luck in it. I think you can quite easily follow everybody else, and there's a lot of people recording similar albums to me, and you could quite easily have exactly the same track listing. It's far easier to promote because everyone knows all the songs. You can go out there and just go, well, it's my version and that's it, but you generally have a lot less success than being a bit more of a forerunner and taking a few more risks. And I like taking a few risks. Obviously you need things people can relate to and recognise, but it's a fantastic A&R man, artist and repertoire, and the record company, he's kind of the boss in picking the tunes, and it's his neck on the line. But it's him, the producers and management, and myself that all throw a load of ideas in, and you come up with, hopefully at the end, the right choice.
Could you say the title properly? Because I'm rubbish at things like that.
You said it very well, actually. It's Canto della Terra.
We got through the school days and they weren't much fun. When was the first point that you realised I have an exceptional talent?
When I was performing, I remember it vividly, actually. I was in the West Sussex Boys Choir that I sang with for 8 years from the age of 7, and I loved my life with that. It was great. Once every fortnight we rehearsed. We had a great time rehearsing and then kicking a ball around in the playground. Fantastic. And we had a performance in Arundel Cathedral, which we performed at regularly at the time. And I performed Panis Angelicus solo along with the choir. And at the time there was a series called The Choir on television. People probably won't remember it at all now, but back then it was the big thing. And Panis Angelicus was the tune from that show. I performed the solo, finished it, and as you do, you have a quick bow and you go back to the back of the choir. The audience didn't stop applauding, so the conductor, Arthur Robson, calls me back round. I bow again, don't stop, so I bow again. Then I go back to the back, think that's it. They don't stop. It carried on. It felt like an absolute eternity, and I then realised that something I'd got was bringing so much pleasure to so many people, and it's something I want to explore as much as I possibly can, because that's the most amazing gift to have in life. To bring pleasure to people and do something that you love in doing that is the ultimate gift, and I wanted to then explore that as far as I could. And from that moment it was always my dream to be where I am now, and it's come true. It's mad.
And did it in some way make you feel legitimate after the bullying and after being unpopular with some, and then suddenly these thousands of people were applauding?
Yeah, it was during that process. That was what made my life quite complicated, in that on the one hand I was fully accepted in this world in the choir and with the audiences that we performed to, and I got the most incredible reception both here, and we toured in Europe and Florida, and I had an incredible time, and in that world I was completely accepted. But then at school people were picking on me for doing what I loved and what I excelled in, and it was difficult for me to kind of understand that in my head, that it was complete polar opposites. But I think that's what made me continue doing it. I think if I had marginal success and my mum was clapping when I sang at home on the jukebox or something, then I may not have continued to sing. But because the support was so strong and because my life was so fulfilled outside of the school life, that's why I carried on with it.
And your mum, did she always know that you were a genius?
I'm quite the opposite to a genius. I failed my degree, got a diploma, I got 2 Ds at A-level. I've never been the academic type, but I've managed to. I'm intelligent as such, and I can talk and I can perform. But anything that then goes down into writing, I just get completely stumped. But she's, and along with my dad, have been incredibly supportive throughout my whole life, and it's been amazing to have them there at virtually every concert that I've done, supporting me, enjoying it, and sharing something that's really special.
Okay, you mentioned Panis Angelicus earlier. We'll take that because it's on the CD. The pronunciations, you're not from Italy, you're not from these places where these songs were written. Help me with how you get that right, because there's nothing worse than hearing somebody, Panis Angelicus, you know.
I think having sung from an early age, and a lot of music now is in all sorts of languages. I mean, with the album now, it's a huge mix from, you've got Italian, you've got Icelandic with Hopipola, you've got French. Oh no, the French didn't make it. We've got the English, you've got the Latin. There's a huge broad mix, and it's Spanish with Aranjuez, and it's very confusing. But at the same time, with a great team around me working on it, we translate it together. We ensure the pronunciation is correct, and hopefully then not embarrassing yourself when you get to perform them in front of people from those nations. So it's a hard process, and for me, language isn't the easiest thing for me to understand. I don't really understand British grammar, let alone then translating it into other languages. It's one of those things that for some reason they just don't teach at school. So then when you're trying to learn Italian and they're going, well, that's the disjunctive preposition of this, and that's the adverb and the pronoun, and I think, what on earth are you talking about? It's so complicated. But what I get to do with the songs is break it down, translate it, understand what it's about, and hopefully perform it in an authentic fashion.
Thank God you're talented. You'd be on the dole if not, wouldn't you?
I would. Definitely would.
We're back with our remaining moments with Jonathan Ansell. That is Panis Angelicus. Thank you for your insight today to your life. I don't know what it is about your fans, but they really seem to love you, and you've allowed them into your life to an extent where they feel they have a part of you. That's very smart, because you're nothing without your audience, are you?
It's not smart. It's important. I wouldn't be here without supporters. I wouldn't be here without fans. I wouldn't be here without forums of people online chatting about every single element of my life. And to have hardcore supporters who come to virtually every single thing I do, I think without exception there has been a representative from my online forum at every single concert I've done since going solo. And to have that support is incredible. So it's hardly hard for me to then show my appreciation to them and chat to them and sign things for them and have pictures with them, and they are enabling me to do what I love, so it's hardly a chore.
And on the days when you're busy or tired or frustrated, how do you force yourself to give time to them? Because it only takes one person to see the wrath of your tongue,
yep,
and word gets around on your website and suddenly you're finished. It's a hard thing to be famous, isn't it?
It is difficult in that respect. When you are tired and you've been run down and you've really not got the energy to go and stand there for 20 minutes, you still do it, because ultimately it's a lovely, lovely thing to do. And they are special people who go out and buy tickets and albums and everything I do, and they love and they get pleasure from what I do. So if I can go and talk to them for 30 seconds each, a minute each, and bring some pleasure to them for that day, it's in some ways makes me feel better anyway, rather than making me feel more frustrated and tired.
What is your life like now? How do you wake up in the morning and think, oh God, I'm so popular, I've got to do these things that, of course, were unimaginable 5 years ago?
It's strange. I just kind of get on with it, and in some ways, I'm not fully aware of how well things are going, because I don't think until things start calming down you really realise it. But I love every single day when I have the chance to do all the fantastic things I do with work. I'm so mad busy with both promotion, performing live and learning tracks, and performing with other artists and meeting incredible people, and it's an amazing privilege. And I wake up every day thanking my lucky stars that I am doing what I do. But I don't have any sort of I don't know, I'm completely aware that this is just in some ways a huge amount of luck and the right direction. And yes, I'm talented, yes, I can sing, but at the same time people are on my side and supporting me, and while that's there, I'm incredibly grateful, and I know that I am a very, very lucky individual to be able to do what I do.